Welcome to the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. Let's get after it.
What are you fighting for? What are you getting after? What seeds are you planting? What are you overcoming? Think big. Think even bigger. Take some risks. God's got your back. Go for it. Don't hold back. Don't ever have regrets in your life. Go fail. Go grow from those things. Live your life.
Your identity is not defined by your successes or your failures.
If you're not happy where you're at, you won't be happy where you're going. Choose to do the things that will make you the person you want to be, that will make you a better person next week and next year.
You're going to have to leave some things you're actually good at behind so that you can find what you're wired for, what you're born for.
Being a world-class entrepreneur is being in every area of life excellent.
It is the little things that are so easy not to do.
The best thing that you can do is assume the best in people.
I want people around the world to believe they can do something great with their life.
If I build the biggest business, but I destroy my physical body and I lose my health, I don't think that's success. While you're on the journey climbing to success, never forget the things that matter most.
If you like this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified every time a new episode is released. Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with Joe Duncan. Joe is located in Sydney, Australia, and it's Monday morning as we interview, and it is Sunday evening here on the east coast of the U.S. for me. Joe Duncan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jonathan, it's great to be here. Really excited about today's podcast.
Just so you know, you are the first Australian on the show.
At least I'm the first at something. That's a real positive on a Monday morning.
Guys, Joe is a coach. He's a speaker. He's an author and an entrepreneur. He's a founder of Before 5 a.m. and an all-around cool guy. So to give you a brief background on Before 5 a.m., it's a leading personal development brand and movement that has helped thousands of people around the world, and that's probably a fairly modest number. The mission is to help people all over the world perform and function at their highest level and find their unique voice so that they can make an impact in their community and beyond. So the before 5 a.m. philosophy is simple. No matter where you are in life, no matter your resources or situation, you can do a few simple things each day that will allow you to change your life for the better. In turn, elevate others. So Joe, anything from that intro you'd like to add?
I think you absolutely nailed it, Jonathan, and I'm so glad you talked about the philosophy, because as a whole, a lot of people get caught up in the whole Before 5 a.m. thing being a morning wake up early concept, and that's part of it. But the bigger picture of Before 5 a.m. is about what you can do. And I've always looked at success and what I teach people around the realm of what can you do when you got no resources, you're not feeling good, you're not in the flow, you don't have money, you don't have time, you're not in a place you want to be. And most of my strategies and the philosophy overall is what can you do with what you have?
Joe, give us a brief background on how long Before 5 a.m. has been going.
Before 5 a.m., as in a formal way, has been going for about 5 years. And it took me the best part of 20 years to get there. And the backstory of Before 5 a.m. is I actually knew at a young age what I was going to do. And it always sounds funny, but I knew very early on in my life that what I'm doing now was what I'd be naturally gifted at. And at 17, I had cancer, and I had an opportunity then to really start speaking and talking about all things which I always wanted to do, which is helping people and healing and sharing ideas. You know what? That opportunity, just when you're young, it comes, it goes. Maybe you don't look at it as well as you could have and take full advantage of it. As life would go on, it took me 20 years after that, or 15 years after that, to travel, to have a few jobs, few careers, few businesses, to really be able to be confident enough to go out and say, you know what, Joe, I'm just going to go out there and start this thing. Because for so long, I knew what I was gifted in. But as you can imagine, there's no career path for what I do today. People don't pat you on the back and say, hey, why don't you go out and be a motivational speaker? Why don't you go help and heal? Why don't you share strategies and ideas to make people's lives better? So it came to me not that long ago, 5 years ago. I put my foot down. I said, look, Joe, you've told yourself this story a million billion times that you would be good at this. So I said, go put your money where your mouth is. And 5 years ago, I did exactly that. What I did was I cut everything off. I cut off every other possible choice or opportunity in my life. I built this thing on the back of full commitment. And if it was going to work, it was going to work. And if it wasn't, well, we'll have to figure out what I do right now. But thank God it worked out.
That's interesting. A lot of successful people in whatever they do, it seems that they've burned the ships and go full commitment. So I like that you added that in there. Joe, we start out the show with a favorite success quote. And so share with us what you got and what it means to you.
The quote goes like this: "The ultimate expression of power is self-control." That quote is something that I created in my own life when I was going through a period where I was going through a tough time, and I wasn't in a place where I could live with the repercussions of my outcome. The outcome which I'd put myself in and the situation I put myself in wasn't favorable. And I remember that writing this down and thinking about it a lot, but the ultimate expression of power is self-control. It's not always expressing yourself and having freedom and doing all these things that people go on about every day. Often it's about having the ability to regulate yourself, manage yourself, and put yourself in a position where you can keep moving forward. And that's why that quote is always dear to my heart, and I most probably post that, every 90 days or so I share that one or whenever it's on my mind. But it's true to me that the ultimate expression of power is self-control. And on top of that, long before I even wrote that quote, was, the whole before 5 a.m. concept was I'd wake up and have a cold shower at about, 4:15, 4:30 every morning. And I did that because I wanted to control my body. I wanted to see how I could get into that state. If I could control my morning, if I could control what I do in the shower when it's really cold in the morning, or, do a few simple things I can do every morning, go for a walk, write in my journal, then I was able to exercise my willpower. So I understood after a while that the more I was able to control myself, the more freedom I had, the more I was able to express myself, and the greater the work I could do.
Kind of letting that resonate for a second. Joe and I, we did speak a couple days ago in preparation for this interview, and just so we could maximize the time together and really help you guys as the listeners to maximize your accomplishments in 2019 and managing yourself and being committed to the fundamentals and executing appropriately on that. Joe, I have a confession to make. I have not sat down yet and taken, hour, 2, 3, even 5 hours or a whole day to plan out my 2019. I realized this towards the end of yesterday, and the reasons are numerous. I have plenty of excuses as to why not. I do have long-term 3-year, 5-year goals that I'm still living by to go ahead and accomplish, but I have not sat down, broken them back down into reverse engineered monthly type of goals. I did want to share that so that if you're listening and you're in a similar boat, you're not thinking that this year it's already too late. What's the point? This year is getting away from me. I'll just make the best of it that I can. It's like, no, let's take a step back for a second and capitalize on this opportunity that we have with 11 months left in 2019. So, Joe, with goal setting, what initially interested you with setting goals?
It's a great question. And by the way, no one's too late to get started. In fact, I generally say the ideal time to really get started on a new year is February, which sounds funny. But once you get the Super Bowl out of the way, once you get New Year's and all that stuff out of the way, most people are productive from February through to October, generally speaking, from a business sense. After that, you got Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff coming up. So, you got plenty of time to get it in order. And today, I guess we'll all do that together. So what got me started really focusing on goal setting? I read all the books, as we all have. I watched all the videos, consumed all the information, and got it wrong for most of my life. And I really spent a lot of time journaling and mapping this thing out so it would work. And I have a book called A Blueprint, which I often share online. The Blueprint was a concept I actually created long before I created Before 5 a.m. to change my life. And I sat down and said, why can't I find a book I want out there? Why can't I find the goal-setting methodology I want out there? So I basically went out and started to write my own system and my own way of doing things. And I worked out very quickly that I'd been doing it wrong. Like most people, I'd been setting goals which weren't aligned with my greater vision and purpose in life. I'd had goals to earn this much money. I'd want to buy this house. I'd want to buy this car. And none of them were aligned with anything I actually wanted in my life. They were short-term. They were all resource-heavy goals, which I think a lot of people find themselves in the trap of having. And, the day that changed my life in terms of goal setting was the day I figured out I had to flip it on its head and start with the bigger picture, my vision, my purpose, my gifts, my talents, the things I want to give of myself, not the things I wanted to take from this planet. And once I understood that the game's about giving, not taking, not about accumulating, that's when I started to move forward at a rapid pace. That's a very hard concept for people to understand when we live in a world which is very much around can I get a pay rise? What can I get? Can I buy a new house? Can I get a new car? It's all about tech. And if you looked at my goals today, there's nothing in there which represents any material item or any great sense of creating wealth creation other than the need to create what I need to build a great company. I went on that journey like most people, trying to find the answers, and I realized that I finally got it right when I made it about vision, my purpose, my goals, and then the next step, which really solved that problem and how I really started to move forward, was only having goals which aligned with that. Anything else which didn't align with my vision and who I was going to become, I removed. And that, absolutely ruthless about that. I didn't consider anything else, and that was most probably the second thing which really moved the game forward for me.
Before I ask the question about how to set those types of goals, many people in my boat are driven, proactive. I personally understand the vanity of materialism, just being through personal things in my life, tragedies, and, you going through cancer at such a young age. I mean, that had to have, that kind of stuff really changes your perspective, and maybe not right away, but long term things happen. And my point is, I understand the vanity of materialism. I'm not about being flashy. I don't care. Don't get me wrong. I like to enjoy, a nice car. I like nice things, high quality. That being said, I feel like I have my head on straight is my point. And I believe that most people listening to my show are in this similar boat. They understand that, yeah, I know I have to set goals. Yeah, I know I have to work hard. Yeah, I know I have to be consistent. Yeah, I know I should do all these things. You've already answered my main question, which is, why do I still feel in certain areas or in some way, maybe 30% of my lifestyle is wheels spinning out instead of getting traction, getting grit into the ground, and propelling myself forward towards my vision. So you mentioned only have goals that align with your vision. So would you speak on that and how to really know if they are?
Absolutely, and it's a good point. And before I answer that question of how to get traction, having goals around material things, nothing wrong with that at all. But I think you got to have that as part of your vision and the smaller part of your vision. Having the latest BMW, Mercedes, whatever you guys want to buy,
right.
Having the latest supercar, nothing wrong with that at all. But the guys who I coach who have all those things at a relatively high level, it's just a piece of the pie. It's part of the deal. It's not the deal. And I think that's the biggest thing, especially when you talk to young people starting out. They can't grasp it. They think that is the deal, rather than realizing it's part of everything else that makes a man or a woman and their lifestyle. So that solves that problem. The second bit about getting traction and really moving forward and aligning yourself comes down to certainty. What drives you in life is how certain you feel about anything. When you're in a relationship with a girl or a guy, what really drives that relationship is how much certainty that partner brings to your life. And the same with your goals. The more certain you are about your goals, the more certain you are that you can make it happen, the more inclined you are to move forward and really push forward. What happens is most people never really get that ability to really sink their teeth in and really move forward year on year, mainly because they don't know enough about their goals. They haven't done the work, the research. They haven't studied their goals. Everyone's good at setting goals, there or thereabouts. But the second part of goal setting is, how much do you know about your goals? If I ask you, Jonathan, anyone listening to this, tell me everything about your goal that you want to achieve, you should be able to reel that off better than anything to do with the latest car, the NFL score, what's happening online, social media. All that stuff should be secondary to knowing every single thing about your goals. Doesn't mean you know exactly how to achieve it, but you know who's achieved it, you know how to do it, you have an understanding of how to do it, and that gives you certainty, that gives you power. And from there, you start to believe it's possible. And what happens with most people when they set goals, they write it down on paper, I want to do this, I want to achieve that, but there's nothing backing that. They don't know how, they don't know why, they don't understand the metrics and how to make that happen. So I've always been big on teaching people to really study and invest in their goals, create that certainty within, so you know what's possible, so you know how to do it, and then you go out and do it. It's not walking off a cliff at that point. You're just simply taking steps forward. More information comes to light, more data comes to light, and it becomes more real because you already have, in some area of your life, you already have understood what it takes and how it's going to work.
So the biggest thing is create certainty around the type of goals that will propel you to your vision. a lot of us have goals that are very ambitious. They're huge goals. So that, I guess, is more of a vision. So a goal is more a thing that you can accomplish in a set period of time, correct?
Yeah, goals are stepping stones towards your vision, nothing more. So if someone comes to me with a list of goals and no vision, then they're of no use to you. They will not serve you, generally speaking. So they have to be stepping stones towards a greater vision. And then second to that, you have to have a pretty good understanding of time frame. And you might have heard me say this before. My goal is to impact the lives of 1 billion plus people. And guess what? I'm not planning on doing that in 3 years. I'm not planning on doing that in 5 years. I have a 20, 25-year plan to make that happen over, so I have a lot of patience and I have a lot of time to get it right. But old Joe Duncan, 25-year-old Joe Duncan, would have expected to have impacted the lives and taught 1 billion people in 3 years. So as I've gotten older and looked at more goals in my own process, things take so much time. So I think, the old philosophy is always double or triple how long you think it will take, and you'll be there or thereabouts if you work consistently every day.
Okay, I'm with you so far. Going back to that 25-year-old Joe Duncan, currently you think big. You said in the beginning of this interview you got it wrong for most of your life by focusing on the wrong stuff. Were you always entrepreneurial and or risk tolerant for that amount of time? Share with us a bit about your journey from if you can remember back that far to present day, so we can have a better understanding of what you mean by focused on the wrong stuff, so we can avoid focusing on the wrong stuff.
I remember saying this to my parents. I must have been 5 or 6, quite young. All the things I liked as a kid on TV. You turn the TV on and you see Formula One cars racing around, and you watch that on the weekend. And then there's cool TV shows on, and you're watching Miami Vice or whatever's on the TV. And I realized, I watch all these things on TV. I always said to my mum and dad, why do these people always seem to not have a 9-to-5 job? So I reckon by the age of 5, 6, 7, I had already worked out I didn't have an option, because all the things I liked, all the things I wanted to do, all seemed to involve money, unfortunately. So, I never, so I was a bit different to a lot of kids out there. I was really into Formula One. I was really into motorsport. And today that's still my largest passion. And I worked out very quickly by reading about these guys and studying all these guys involved in motorsport was a big money business. And along with that, all the other things you'd read and all the entrepreneurial books. So my first business was at 16, and I haven't stopped. And I don't think there's been a period, even when I've worked with people, there hasn't been many periods when I didn't have a side hustle. And I've always tried. I've always worked on a business, and I've always believed that for me and what I wanted to create and do, even beyond my mission in life, and even including my mission in life, requires significant resources. So that was never going to happen by being a good company man. And I worked that out pretty early. And also that has an impact on your ability to be steady in jobs and things like that, because I would always look for the next opportunity as soon as I got a job. So that I've always lived on that wavelength, and I've always been pretty committed to that path. If things don't work out with before 5 a.m. or whatever happens, I'll get back up and start the next thing. That's for me a lot of fun. So I wouldn't say I have a high tolerance for risk. And when I was young, I hated the failures and the downside of risk. Now I fully understand and expect there to be a massive downside for taking big risks and constantly trying and going for things. But I'm all right with that now.
So you have to be relentless in order to stay on that path.
Absolutely.
When you said you got it wrong for most of that period of time, share some examples of that.
I definitely put my money into all the wrong things. Fast cars and, going out, having fun, traveling sometimes. And look, they're all good experiences you learn. I wish I'd made better financial decisions from the moment I left school. I definitely didn't. I went from job to job. I tried a few things. But then again, my philosophy was always, and the actual philosophy I still teach today, is go and get as many jobs as you can in as many industries as you can, so you learn quickly. So I wouldn't take that back. But what I would take back, looking back, is, I definitely didn't have my eye on the prize when it came to financial education and creating wealth. And it's not really about creating wealth for me. It's about buying time. And I realized a bit too late in my life, and only in the last 5 years I realized that every dollar I earn isn't mine. It's mine to invest in my vision and dream. And every dollar I earned bought me time. When you're young, you don't think like that at all. So I wasn't able to buy enough time. So some businesses I had or some ideas I had, I wasn't able to see through because I'd run out of money, run out of time, and I'd have to get a job. I'd have to find a way to supplement it. So there's some of the mistakes I made. Some of the other mistakes, and the biggest mistake I ever made was I was very hard on myself, too tough on myself. And the third mistake I've made, and I think we're all guilty of this, is I wasn't patient enough. I expected everything to happen within. I can tell you guys, if you were to come over to my place and look through all my old journals, we'd all be having a good laugh at Joe Duncan wanting to make $3 million in 3 months. Doing what exactly, I don't know. But, looking back, I have a bit of a laugh. And you know what? I see it with kids today, and they all send me their goals. And, Joe, I want to be a millionaire by the end of the year. And I'm thinking to myself, let's just start with making $1,000 by the end of the year.
And on a side note to that, it can be hard to grow a brand when you stick to the core value that you know to be true, which is slow and steady growth will win in the long run. I find big brands a lot of times that explode quickly or quicker than perhaps a fundamental-based brand, they show people what people think success is, the flashy cars. And maybe, like you said, that can be part of it. But when I have a moral issue with that. Like if I started flashing nice watches and nice cars every single day to be, oh, this is what you can have, that would grow my brand faster, but it's not even going to attract the type of people I'm hoping to attract because it's just showing them what they think the success is. And like you're saying, it's a lot more about the fundamentals and the patience and the long-term approach. Is that correct?
100%. To this day, I've built before 5 a.m. in the most organic way possible. I haven't spent $1 on it. And in fact, it didn't cost me $1 other than a domain name to get started. So I have always built it organically and slowly, true to the methodology. And again, I don't always show people all the cool stuff I do either, because I want people to understand that success isn't about those things. Everyone gets caught up on those things from time to time. We all do, and we all want the private jet, and we all want the big house and all that cool stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the overall sense of what success is, it's really about systems, processes, management of self, and the ability to move towards something bigger than all those things. Rather than spending money on those things, you want to be creating. And creating allows you to have all those things. It solves all your problems. I think getting people in the mindset of creating, going out there and doing what they love, what they're passionate about, not conforming to what everyone else wants you to do, and just going out there and doing it every day. So you're 100% right, Jonathan. And the other thing is also for a lot of your listeners, a lot of people listening to this, building the brand you want really comes down to you having the patience to be professional, to be aligned with your values and beliefs, so you can attract the client base that you ultimately want. And there's no client base to be had at the bottom of the tree, as I always say. Anyone looking at, and anyone who's inspired by the shiny things generally aren't going to be clients of mine.
And and if they are clients, they usually don't last. They'll burn out.
No. And then the second part in the, this sort of realm, they usually are starting out in their journey. So that's how they start. And then they all kind of come back around after a few years and realize, oh, this success thing requires actual diligence and goal setting and planning and routines, habits, and strategy. But, whatever it takes to get people inspired and moving forward, I think for most people, we all got into success because of the shiny things in some way, shape, or form. I got into the mindset of, I better read this Tony Robbins book so I can learn how to have those things. But ultimately, I think when you look at building a brand and building a company, slow and steady is better. Only recently in the social media realm has it seemed like the opposite is true. But I think the more organic you are, the more longevity you have.
The more organic you are, the more longevity you have. I like that. Mm-hmm. Before I ask you how we sit down and set these goals that support our vision and the daily fundamentals and the focus on that, I want to ask you on the side of what you just shared about wishing you had educated yourself on financial earlier on. How did you, or how would you advise somebody who's in their later 20s, 30s, who they have that itch to start really facilitating effective financial education so that they can buy back some time?
Yeah, you know what? It wasn't for a lack of reading every book about money reading, it wasn't for a lack of knowledge that I ended up in that position. It was a lack of implementation. When you're young, you have impulses. That's always hard to get out of your system, but every dollar you earn is not yours. And living by that philosophy solved a lot of my problems. It's not mine to go and spend on a holiday. It's not mine to go and buy that new car that I really like, or that new thing for my apartment, or whatever it is, or the new laptop or iPad or whatever's shiny. That money I earn needs to be put away into a place or a space which allows me to then create. And now I only look at money as buying me time. I don't even look at money as buying me anything shiny or bright, because I can have anything I want in the world ultimately, because you don't have to own things. If you want to drive a Ferrari, rent one. If you want to fly on a jet, charter one. You don't have to own them. You just have, if you want to have those experiences. So I think today in the modern world, kids need to be able to be free to create. And being free to create, or any human beings, being free to create in the truest sense of the word usually requires you to have the resources to do it without the stress. And I've been there so many times in my life, Jonathan, where I had all the creativity in the world, all the ideas, all the energy, love, and passion to do something, but I had the bills coming in stacking up. And you'd be surprised how quickly passion goes out the door when the bills start stacking up. Mm-hmm. So my kind of methodology on that is, don't get yourself too invested in anything. Don't oversubscribe to things. Don't put yourself in a position where the bills can stack up on you, number one. Number two, every excess dollar you have, put aside or put into. And this is an interesting question I got asked the other day. Is it better to put aside or put into your project? And I always say put into your project. Putting aside money generally is a boring exercise. But if you have a side hustle, if you have a project and you have an extra $100 lying around, maybe throw that into a course, maybe throw that into Google Ads, maybe throw that into improving your website or your product. And that way you're getting an upside return straight away with your money, rather than kind of putting it away and then not feeling very inspired. So I would say, you can read all the books on earth, you can take all the knowledge you want, but wealth creation and making good decisions financially for the sake of being able to create comes down to just putting your money aside, putting into things, and then you also have to work on increasing what you earn, right? And I think that's the biggest problem. A lot of people, you got to put yourself in a position where, you earn more money so you can put money aside or reduce your expenses, which is something that took me a long time to get my head around. And I will say this before I wrap up on that point. Before I started before 5 a.m., I had put myself on a $500 a week limit of what I can spend, including everything. So that goes to show you how much I reduced in order to be here today. And if I lived like I had always lived before 5 a.m., there'd be no before 5 a.m. today.
There you go. So you were disciplined in those routines prior to launching.
Yep. A couple of years before I was able to really get into before 5 a.m., I cut everything out. And literally, not just financially, but in every way, I learned that if I could buy time. Once I worked out I could buy time by not spending too much money, then I was really able to create all this stuff that you guys see today. And I would have never really been able to do that prior. It would have just been a hobby.
I very strongly resonate with that. It's very similar for my journey thus far. My parents instilled in me a frugality, which I appreciate. I've kind of taken that and ran with it and was able to create a bit of abundance in certain areas like time over the last few years. And I find that, like you said, I want to touch on something with the day job thing. I'm at a point where, like you just said, and I want to provide some clarity for the listeners, because I'm just learning this myself over the last couple months, and it's been a big eye-opener and helped me just relax quite a bit. Really adopt the patience. It just really sit there with that word and understand it, what it means for your life and your journey. That can give you a lot of clarity. Then for the more clarity, I understand that I have vulnerabilities and susceptibilities to fall off this side or that side of the entrepreneurial path when I don't seek out the help that I need. For example, like you said, Joe, if you're working, let's say 8 to 5 every day or 8 to 7 every day at a corporate job, that can take your time from having that time to be creative. The problem is we don't have to get into that whole transition. But what I'm actually going to be doing is going back into that world and giving it my absolute all, and because I've found ways that I can still grow and prosper my brand, Heart Healthy Hustle, simultaneously. Now, last year there would have been no way. I was pretty much full time with everything, and I'm still full time invested. But it's a position in entrepreneurship versus just entrepreneurship, like just podcast, just that. Eventually, I'd love for it to be just that, but I still have a lot to learn. I know that this work opportunity is incredibly exciting to me. Sometimes being a full-time employee works better for some entrepreneurial personality types who just have a lot of issues with keeping themselves accountable. So I'd love to talk on how can we stay fully accountable to ourselves with our daily fundamentals. We were speaking the other day before the show, and we were talking about how, you know, it's more important to focus on these fundamentals than reading the next goal-setting book. And being that I'm so driven, we're hungry people out here, we are ambitious. There has to be, I'm asking you with your expertise and your knowledge in this area to speak to that area of, okay, now I'm committed to my vision, this entrepreneurial thing. Whether I'm working full-time or not, I'm full-time committed to this, and I need some guidance on what daily fundamentals should I be following. Obviously, you know, eat right and work out and get up on time, but can you break it down even more simply to where it's just as simple as...
Yep. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. And when we were chatting, I remember my own journey. And I remember always saying, you know, the whole before 5 a.m. thing is actually designed around professionals, all being said. And just like you and like a lot of people, I worked 12 hours a day. I didn't have much time for myself. That's where I started to wake up early and work on myself. Yeah, I did all that work before 5 a.m. and then I'd hop in the shower and have a shower and shave and put my suit on and head off to work. So I completely understand your journey. But as for your question, which is what do you do when you're fully committed, you're all in, now what do you do? You know, how do I make this happen? Yeah, I know I should eat right. I know what I should do, but what moves the game forward? What allows you to perform and function? Often a lot of entrepreneurs, and you know this, even if you're working part-time, you've got a lot of time at home, spending a lot of time at home. So I have a few rules around growing your business and being more fully committed to it. And I share it to a lot of entrepreneurs I coach, especially ones who have come out of corporate America who are completely lost once they're at home for 6 hours a day or 8 hours a day or 24 hours a day for a lot of them. I always say this, right? If you want to move the game forward and get some clarity around what to do, the first thing you have to do is have some routines and a schedule around meeting people. And you guys always have to remember that. Just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you negate that. And when you work for a company like you do, Jonathan, you meet people every day, right? You get to say hi, you get to have a coffee, you get to wave at them, you get to talk about things. And entrepreneurs often struggle when they fully commit to having a schedule around meeting people and building those conversations and those relationships. So that's one of the key things you got to have in your schedule. The second thing you have to do is you have to have a very strict routine around work time. Any entrepreneur, whether you're part-time or full-time, you can easily fall into the trap of thinking, well, all my free time I can tie up on my work. Well, that's not always true. If you don't have a clear start time and end time, then you're not going to be able to get a result. And this is something I coach a lot of entrepreneurs on, who wake up at 5 o'clock, they go for their workout, they do all the stuff that Joe tells them to do, and then they're twiddling their thumbs from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m., wondering what they'll do for themselves. So have strict work times is a big factor. Just like when you work for a company, you don't get to do your job whenever you want. You know, you're trying to get that job done in a very particular time frame and stay focused on that. So make sure you have a very strict time frame of which you consider work, and then break that down into research time, work time, study time, whatever you do. But only a small period of time really needs to be dedicated on work every day. And that does sound funny because we hear about hustling and grinding every day. But the truth is, although I work 18 hours every day, my actual window for work, other than all the other things I do, is relatively small. Maybe 4, maybe 5 hours a day max. And then the rest of it is, you know, training, calls, networking, growing my brand, creating content, whatever you want to call that. But I have a small window every day for that. The other thing entrepreneurs or anyone who wants to build a brand or starting out needs to look at is energy levels. And, you know, you kind of hit on that, and your podcast is immense when it comes to energy levels and health. You have to manage and put yourself in a position where you're constantly raising energy levels, whether that's through your diet, what you eat, what you're doing on your diet, whether that's through your exercise regimes. One of the things I make all entrepreneurs do who work with me is that I make sure they walk 3 times a day. I walk about if I'm stuck at home and I really have a big project on, I'll maybe walk for 20 minutes 5 times a day just to get out of the house, get moving. If I'm writing a book or something like that, I'll need to do that. So keep moving, keep your energy levels high. And the final part about energy is put yourself in inspiring environments. And this is true whether you work for someone else or not. You can do your work now anywhere in the world. So go find an art gallery, go find the best hotel lobby in the world, go, where, and you're in North Carolina, plenty of inspiring places out there. Some people are in New York, some people are in Sydney, some people are, anywhere in the world. They're in Texas.
Yeah.
There's always somewhere you can go to raise your energy levels and be more inspired. So they're my kind of tips. And you want to build your day around those things that I mentioned and put them in a structure and a manner where everything is part of a day, everything's part of a week. So no week goes by without you taking charge on those things. No day goes by without you making effort on those things.
What I think a lot of people are seduced or enticed by entrepreneurship initially, outside of the DNA of being an entrepreneur, is the false sense of freedom, when in reality, you're saying, yes, you're laughing because you understand. Yes, the beauty of entrepreneurship is you can leverage productivity and the velocity of productivity. But until you start treating yourself as a professional, structured routines, you're not going to have an increase in velocity of productivity. You're going to start tricking yourself into being busy, and then it becomes even more challenging, and you become in a rut or spinning your wheels, so to speak. So I think if you're completely honest with yourself about your goals, being 100% clear, are these absolutely going to support the vision long term? If not, it shouldn't be a goal. Yes, with entrepreneurship, I think that the beauty of it is you can get more done in a shorter period of time. You mentioned you're doing a ton of stuff in your work window, and then you're doing more dynamic activities that include work activities like calls, meetings, things like that. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, 100% right. And it's funny you mentioned that. If you want freedom, keep your job. That's kind of my philosophy. Don't bother being an entrepreneur. Freedom is not a entrepreneurial concept. Being an entrepreneur requires you to actually level up. You pay yourself. You pay to build yourself. You don't just get to rock up and collect a check. And I think that's a big fallacy. And I think I loved what you mentioned there. It's so true. Yeah. The day you cross over that line, you have to treat yourself as a professional, just like a doctor, just like a lawyer, just like any professional person. They have schedules, they have time frames, they have meetings, they have to dress up for work every day. Guess what? Just because you work from home doesn't mean you don't wear a suit. Put your tie on. Treat yourself even more than a professional than you did when you worked for someone else, because guess who your boss is? You. And you should be your toughest boss. And if you're not, then you're going to ask yourself why you're not. So I'm a big believer in treating yourself as a professional. I can tell you, I've been there. I've worked for myself on and off since I was 21. So I can tell you guys that I've watched every midday show there was to watch. I've opened the fridge 500 times during the day just to see if anything's changed. I've opened up every cupboard in the pantry to see if there's anything new for me to eat. And I've wasted so much time during the day as an entrepreneur. And when things started to click for me is when I realized, hang on a second, Joe, this isn't what you signed up for. You're a professional. You do things as you would when you work for someone. And when you work for other people, you have a sense of accountability. When you work for yourself, and people do have this illusion that you can do whatever you want. And then the final part of working for yourself and being an entrepreneur, and even if you work for a company, you're still entrepreneurial, is set the tone early so people around you realize you are doing things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of having such a free, open schedule that people around them who have normal 9-to-5 jobs and normal lives start to question whether they're doing anything. So if you are making that leap, day number one, you wake up earlier than you ever did before. You dress up better than you've ever dressed up before, and you work harder than you ever dressed up before. And keep your free time for professional contact. Don't waste that time, because after a while, and this is a big problem I try to coach out of a lot of entrepreneurs, after a while, a lot of people just see you as someone who's playing around with their hobby rather than someone who is a professional person building a brand, building a company.
Until you're ready to actually commit to that kind of a lifestyle change, you should keep your day job.
100%. And I always say, work full-time on your job, part-time on your passion, until your passion allows you to work part-time on your job, full-time on your passion. And the final transition, if you get it right and if you want to, is go full-time on your passion. But I always generally say the best place to be, when I look at most people's careers, when I look at my own, the best place to be is part-time on your job, full-time on your passion, because it still allows you to have one foot in the real world. The entrepreneurial world is a hollow place compared to the corporate world. in the corporate world, like I said to you before, you're forced to talk to people. You're forced to be surrounded by people. It's not insular. Every day there's things to do in a corporate world, or even if you work at a Starbucks. You have to say, hello, sir, would you like this? When you're an entrepreneur, there's many excuses for you to become an introvert and actually play within yourself. So the best time you have as an entrepreneur is actually part-time job and full-time on your passion. That still keeps one foot in the door until you build your business up enough where you have enough contact and enough people to hang out with who are either clients or future clients or part of your team or whatever it is. But it's a very lonely road if you don't build it that way. And it's something I would say the biggest problem I have and the biggest thing entrepreneurs contact me for now is that exact problem: a lack of productivity, a lack of focus, and really a lack of connections, because a lot of people most probably take that leap a little bit too early in hindsight.
There's less provided structure within in the realm of entrepreneurship. Okay, owning your own thing, doing that. There's less provided structure. So we go to school. So many of us, I really like that approach a lot, Joe, with going from working full-time and then part-time on your passion, having that position in entrepreneurship, even if it maybe isn't really a passion, but it is a way to make some extra money on the side, let's say. People might say, well, how do I know when I should switch to full-time passion or side hustle to part-time corporate? Is that crossing of those, that graph, if you can picture a graph of two lines of both ever increasing, when they meet is that point of, I guess there's different ways to gauge this, but for me, from a very tactical approach, would be, are you out of debt? Are you able to manage everything? Are you in a place financially that it makes sense for you to then go full-time on the business you've been building on the side from your full-time day job? That for me provided so much clarity, because I've been thinking, when do I know when's the time? When do I know? And, if I'm honest, I haven't always been perfect at, I don't know if anyone is, at all the things you said. Keep your energy high. Always be around people. I understand, read books, execute on them, be proactive. I have a podcast. I'm reaching out to professional people. I'm reaching out to entrepreneurs, authors, all this stuff, going to conferences, working on my stuff. And yet it still are parts and pockets of the entrepreneurship vehicle that I'm driving where maybe I have a flat tire because I didn't get up consistently at the same time each day. What would you say then, Joe, to perhaps a bookworm or somebody who is in that part-time, full-time dynamic right now in their life, and they're having trouble executing regardless of the fact that they understand its importance? What would you say to that person who keeps getting the next book and is putting off really getting in on that side passion or hustle?
Yeah, I think we've all been there before. When I look at most people, and this is true for myself, biggest thing that held me back in really being able to sink my teeth into it, and I think we all know this, is you have an idea, and an idea is great. And an idea is not always a business. An idea is not always a good business idea. But you have an idea, and most side hustles and most side projects are good ideas. But your next problem is this, right? And this is the biggest problem you have in any business. Can you execute on it with the resources and connections you have right now? And when I look at most people's business ideas, generally, and that's not to be negative, generally that at this moment in time they can't execute on it just yet. Somewhere down the line they'll be in a better position. Show me your expenses, something I always ask them. Show me the lifestyle you have and you want. And a lot of people either can't take a step back in their perceived lifestyle and who they are and how their friends, family, even their partner perceives them. So you have a resources issue on that front. And then you also have a resources issue in the sense of, do you have the right connections? Do you have the know-how? Do you have the skill sets to pull it off? And a lot of people would say, when I started before 5 a.m., who's to know? So sometimes you have to take that leap of faith. But at the end of the day, if you're ready to go and you want to make something work, then you have really two things you have to fulfill. That is, how much attention you can get your brand, how much can you put out there, how many connections can you build, as in people who care and can invest, or whatever, even stakeholders, don't all have to be shareholders, but invest in some way, shape or form, and then you're off. But most people spend their time focusing on the wrong thing in entrepreneurship. And, I always say there'd be no before 5 a.m. if I didn't force myself to put my ideas out there into the world. It'd just be another little blog, an idea, and I'd be sitting, you wouldn't be interviewing. I'd just be playing with my idea and it'd be a hobby. So you have to kind of get into that mindset of, If you're going to go make this happen, you have to back yourself, believe in yourself, but you also have to have the data and understanding that you can pull it off. Often most people just aren't in that space to pull it off, and they have to go down the road and find out and try things. So I would say generally when you look at starting out and you're in that bookworm place and you're reading that next book, you're consuming the next thing, you have to make a judgment call. Are you going to take a leap of faith and find out how to build the wings halfway down, as the old entrepreneur saying is? Work out how to build a plane once you've jumped off the cliff? Or are you going to spend more time researching, gaining data, but doing that in a professional way? And I think that's the catch. Too many people are reading too many books, but not absorbing, applying, implementing those ideas, number one. So if you are still in the research phase, that doesn't mean you treat that in a sort of lackadaisy research manner. That means you treat it just like a scientist. A scientist puts his lab coat on, he looks at the data, he looks at the books, he does all the research, and then he applies something. He creates a test, a scenario, same as you. So I would always say take a leap of faith or take your research very seriously and make sure you set a goal and a deadline as to when you move forward. You can't just keep sitting on this idea and side hustle hoping it's going to come to life, because I assure you more often than not it doesn't unless you make that kind of leap of faith and take a gamble.
Forcing yourself to test your idea and then gather data in not in lackadaisical way, but a professional way of gathering the data.
Mm-hmm.
That's
100%.
That's so challenging. I'll be honest. It's really challenging because I'm romantic about the things I want to work out. You know, we're romantic about our baby. It's like, I want this podcast to work, but is it really needed? Is it going to reach the numbers that I hope it does one day? Should I just be patient? How patient? Do I wait 3 years? Do I wait 5 years? Do I wait 8 years? Regardless, I think what hacks that fear of maybe it won't reach the vision you have for it, the hack that I have found, if you will, is really the fact that the journey is being so enhanced by me taking this chance, by me putting myself out there and forcing myself, look at it, put my idea out there, gather data however hard it can be to really face that data objectively. But just doing that can be so fulfilling in and of itself, and it teaches you so much about yourself. It increases self-awareness, helps you to grow, it humbles you, all these things. It's a win-win for me. It's a win-win for anybody who is in that place of, I'm ready to try this. I would recommend go for it. Joe, I don't know, would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I did. And when I say I did, in the truest sense of the word, I cut off all other income possibilities. I cut off everything else, got rid of all investments, which I potentially had, removed everything and jumped off the cliff. And, that was it. And I had to build a plane to make this thing work. And luckily I built it quickly enough to get a bit of altitude. Make sure you're all in. And I think the big thing is, you got to ask yourself this, and this is a big problem. A lot of people come to me, and I'd say it's 50-50. 50% of people who approach me have a pure business idea which they have no passion about. It's a pure business idea. And the other 50% come to me with a pure passion but have no business around it. And my concept, before 5 a.m., I can assure you is what you would call a pure passion. Who's to know anyone would care about Joe Duncan's little philosophy on life? Who's to say anyone would care? That is a pure passion project from the heart and soul. And no matter what happens in my life, I will do it for the rest of my life. Is there a business case for it? No, there's no business case. If I told you 5 years ago, this is what I want to do. I want to create an Instagram page and I'll share some of my ideas and some people are going to like it and I'll have 10,000 followers one day and I can do this or that, you'd be laughing your head off. You'd all be thinking I'd gone mad. That's not a business idea. That's a passion project. And you have to be able to understand how to separate the two. And often what you do read when you read a lot of business books, we're talking about business people who are operators. They are simply operators. They buy a McDonald's franchise, they'll operate it, they'll run it. They'll buy a Denny's, they can run it and operate it. Do they create anything? Do they put themselves out there and create new ideas early on? Often they don't. A lot of pure business books you read are operators. What you need to do if you're an entrepreneur and a creator, if you're not an operator, then it's a different game, different set of rules. And those rules demand that you, at some point, when you've gathered enough data and confidence, you got to take a leap of faith. Because more often than not, as an entrepreneur, there's not usually a business case for what you're doing. And when I say business case, not in the sense of a venture capitalist or a bank ever wanting to give you money, and no one really sure whether there's a client base for what you do when you're starting out. And before 5 a.m. fits completely into that realm. So look at your ideas in that sense. Is it a pure business? Hey, Joe, I found this widget on Alibaba. I think I can sell 1 million of them and make $2 a pop. Great. That's not an entrepreneur. That's in the sense of a creator. That's an entrepreneur in the sense of someone who's found a business opportunity and they're finding a way to operate it, make it work, and get the product to market and then pull some money out of it. So be very cautious and careful about which side you fit on, and then what books you're reading around it, because that will definitely cloud your mind or enhance your how you look at it.
One of my favorite ways to learn is through listening. I do enjoy reading, but listening allows you to multitask. Let's say you're driving to work, you're running errands, cleaning up on a Saturday, whatever you're doing. Audio allows you to multitask, and that's why I've reached out to audible.com to get a promo set up between Heart Healthy Hustle Nation and Audible. I became an Audible affiliate, so you can get a free Audible audiobook. I use Audible for many of my audiobooks, tremendous selection of books readily available. So if you don't want to spend a monthly subscription to Audible, you can get one free Audible book, put in your name and email, then you will get a free audiobook, at which point you can listen to that audiobook, keep it forever, and cancel your subscription before 30 days so that you don't get charged for the monthly subscription. This way you get a free book. You guys are awesome. Go to triplehaudiobook.com. That's HHHaudiobook.com. Okay, that's huge. So for me, I lean towards the creator and I understand the importance of the operator. So how could I decipher how to grow the operator side of it?
Yeah, right. That's the $1 billion question, isn't it? So in time, so before 5am is a really good example for you guys to look at. There's no business case for a long time, as we know it. It's just an idea, and after a year, there's no business case really, because I've just created a lot of content. Is it any good? Who's to know? I don't think after a year I even had 10,000 followers. So that goes to show you how long it took. Just even 12 months without any great business. A few coaching inquiries, a few people interested in doing some stuff, but nothing really worth talking about. So as you grow on your passion, which takes time, as you get your content out there, your idea, whatever it is, and you build this thing out, you're still in no man's land. You don't know what it is yet as a business. You know what it is as a creative idea. In time, as you do it more and more people get invested, you find the direction of that business. And then and only then, once you kind of lock in on who you are, what you're about in a more definitive state, and it's a bit more solid, then do you start, and I mean start, to put on your operator hat. Because now there's opportunities. There's ways for you to generate money. There's people who are asking for services. I never actually went and seeked out any business before 5am. And to this day, I generally haven't. My inbox, I don't even have a website for people to send me inquiries. Actually, I do now, but generally speaking, I didn't for most of the time. They just send me a DM, Joe, do you do coaching? Can we get involved? That's it. So who's to say that I ever had a business model in that sense? But once I got to a certain point, then it became very apparent there's a business here. And I need to systemize, develop processes, handle these inquiries, and do what I do for a living now, which is training ultimately. When you look at your journey, the operator comes in time. And you generally can't, with a great passion, with something from the soul, the work of the soul, you generally can't bring that operator, you can't put the operator hat on too soon. That will come in time when the opportunities, and you get a feel for what people are asking you for. People will reach out to you, Jonathan, and say, hey, can you help me build a podcast? 10 people will ask you how to build a podcast, and you might think you were going down a whole different road. You might be thinking, well, I want to be able to coach and help people live healthier lives. Next thing you know, 50 people have asked you how to set up the best podcast in the world. So now you got a different product. Now you got a different service. So you don't know when you go down the passion line. But if you go down the operator line, as I say, the person who's an operator, more traditional business, they're only in it for the money. Yeah, there has to be an upside. So it's very easy transaction to understand.
That's powerful. And that kind of reveals the, the propensity to burn out. Mm-hmm. All right. Joe, I want to transition into the Heart Healthy Hustle round. I'm going to ask you a series of rapid-fire questions based on the words from the title of the show. First category is heart. What activity do you use to care for and strengthen your internal character?
I'll tell you guys exactly what I do. I spend 2 hours a day, every day, working on the work of the soul, whether that's writing in my journal, meditating, going for a walk, playing with my ideas, projects, creating 2 hours a day, every day without fail, with no desired outcome. I'm talking about kindergarten type play. Get my ideas down on paper, play around with things, see what comes out, get it out on paper, out of my soul, and that's what I do for my heart every day.
Powerful. No desired outcome. Key words. Health. How do you maintain your physical health and avoid burnout and keep that energy up?
Yep. So part of that 2 hours often, or a separate 2 hours a day, depending on the day. But in general, I always have a 2 hour block every day for my health and well-being, which is a before 5 a.m. philosophy. And that philosophy is I don't take any days off. I work 7 days, 365, but I give myself 2 to 3 hours every day in total on my overall well-being and health. Whether that's hitting the gym, going for a walk, going for a run. I generally, for my own health, have found, and also feedback from clients as well, walking tends to be the better of all things to do because it gives your mind time to charge, and you can also meditate while you walk as well. So keep that in mind. But as for my health, I do something every day on it rather than wait for the weekends or even work out a few times a week, because that's a bad deal as well. I'm a big believer in no rest days, no days off, and doing something every day for your health. So you don't need to have big holidays. You don't have to go on big vacations to recover and do that. Look after your propensity to burn out up front is my kind of deal.
Hustle. What's your main motivation for doing what you do? Why is it non-optional for you to at least strive to reach your max potential?
You know why it's not optional for me? Because every day, and even, every day now, there's someone out there who needs help. There's someone out there who needs advice. Someone out there who ultimately, me making a post, me replying to them, me commenting can change their life forever. And not in the big way of, wow, Joe, I got $1 million in my bank account, but in the way that they could take one idea, one philosophy, one simple concept that costs them nothing, and apply it to their life. And it could change their ability to think, their ability to act, their ability to perform, their ability to see the world with a fresh set of eyes. And for me, it's a duty. And from that point of view, that's why I wake up every day. And with great responsibility, I look at it from that point of view, and I don't look at it in the sense of this is anyone else's responsibility. If you ask me, I'm the only guy in the world who can do it. Obviously, we know other people can and will. But from my point of view, I take full responsibility for changing lives of other people and humanity. I don't leave it in the hands of Elon Musk. I don't leave it in the hands of Jeff Bezos. I don't leave it in the hands of Bill Gates. It's Joe Duncan's duty. It's not the government's duty. It's not my friends, my family. That's my job in the world, to make this a better place, to create a better society. And in time, 10, 20 years' time, I'm going to get that opportunity to do that on a much larger scale. I look at it as a duty and not an option for me. And there's nothing else I'd rather do until I die. So from that point of view, that's exactly why I hustle. And I never look at work as work. I always look at it as art. It's a way for me to create and paint on my canvas and make this world a more beautiful place overall.
We can all learn a lot from that. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Joe.
Hey, that's all right, Jonathan.
Because if you step up into the gifts that you have, someone needs that help, like you said. And because you are taking action, if we all did that, I mean, even if I did that consistently, each person, it just makes the world a better place.
It really does. Everyone has a unique gift and talent. You got to be able to extract that very quickly and find out how you can apply that into the world you live in. Most people's gifts and talents, especially if you're looking at really creative souls, which a lot of people are, there's no framework for them to play in. You're going to have to go out and create it. Some people are gifted accountants. Some people are gifted. They're gifted at the law and legal things or words. Some people are gifted at creating videos and editing. They just have an eye for it and naturally enjoy it. So you got to find what you're naturally gifted at. And if you find that, then you don't have to worry about making money. Now you get to do what you love. And as I always say, and they pay me for it. Wow, what's going on here? This is amazing.
What do you think's holding most proactive individuals back from fully thriving and actually becoming the person that they know they can be?
Lack of vision, lack of time. Always the case. Vision's not big enough, not strong enough, not clear enough, and they're not giving themselves 30, 40 years to build it. And I would say on average, if you study any great entrepreneur, taking away the freaks, right? Too much focus on the Mark Zuckerbergs, too much focus on the quick money. Always remove them. And this is actually a really good philosophy for you guys in life. Take a snapshot of a list of entrepreneurs in the world and chop the top half who made their money very quickly out of the equation, take the other half with people who took very long time to make their money, like Colonel Sanders took till he was 60, and take a snapshot of the middle, the mean level. And if you look at most people, it's well into the 50s and 60s where wealth's created. It goes to show you it takes time when you look at the overall snapshot for people to work that out. And generally speaking, they don't give themselves enough time and experience to grow. And if you look at most entrepreneurs really get their foot in the door around 40 to 50 to 60s when they kind of start building that wealth. Before that, a lot of duds, a lot of failures, a lot of life experience. And if there's one thing I would say, if you're serious about success, which I know a lot of you are, then go and get a lot of experience quickly. Or if you're lucky enough to leave university or even leave school and know what you want to do, go do it very quickly. The sooner you get started, the sooner you can get that learning curve out of the way. And always be grateful for the learning curve, because it's the janitor who cleans the building who knows the building inside out, not the CEO. Not even the architect doesn't know the building as well as the janitor. And you got to have that mindset. I'm here now learning everything about, if you're a sales professional, you want to learn everything about your business. If you're selling, I don't know, maybe you sell Lexuses. Well, spend a lot of time in your dealership, learn everything about it, what the service manager does, what the guy, the receptionist does, learn every part of your building, every part of the cars, and be grateful for that opportunity to really learn and be interested in whatever you do. And the most successful people I've ever met who are proactive and do really well in life, all are very heavily interested in whatever they do, and they really care about learning. Even if they leave the company after 3 months, for 3 months of their life, they'll tell you to your face, this is the greatest thing on earth, and they'll be fully invested in it.
That is so true. Joe, can you share with us your 3 most influential books?
The 2 books that really allowed me to take the final leap, and I read every book before then. The final leap came down to a book by Seth Godin called Purple Cow, which was all about having a unique, you have to stand out in the marketplace, which I think we all sometimes fail to do. 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. Joe Duncan had a problem, not enough. No one knew who he was, so that was addressed in that book. And then I think that the other book, there's a book called, I know you guys know The Art of War. There's also one called, man, I can't even remember it now, but it's a samurai book, The Way of the Samurai. Interesting book. And those 2 books, really, when I was young, I couldn't really digest that content. I wasn't that interested in it. And trust me, I had The Art of War when I was 18. I couldn't read it. But over time, those books have helped me to consider myself in a different light of how I go about my business. So those 2 books have been pretty powerful as well.
Powerful books. I've read parts of all of them, not the full book, though. So I'll have to get back into those.
That's right.
In conclusion, Joe, if you could go back in time, do you remember where you were living when you were roughly, 20, 25?
Yeah, I remember where I was living.
If you could go back in time, let's say that version of yourself is sitting on a park bench in Sydney, looking out over the water, you're alone, going through a restless time, you have the entrepreneurial mindset, you're just itching to, you're thinking you can't wait for it to be your turn. If present day, knowing everything you've been through since that age, if you could go up, sit next to yourself, put your arm around your own shoulder, what would you tell that young man to do and not to do? Getting into podcasting, I knew that being patient with reaching the right crowd, and I understand the patience required to get to that. As of right now, the show is growing consistently. I'm grateful for the opportunity to keep producing this show and sharing it with you. I need your help. Will you help me grow this show? Share this episode or your favorite episode with one friend. I like to keep the show succinct, to the point, without commercials. What you need to understand is most podcasts include at least one commercial that's about a minute to 2 minutes long. Some podcasts include 2 promotional ads. Other shows include more than 3 and integrate their own products within the show. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I haven't done that yet, and we're almost to 100 episodes. Consider helping me out by sharing the show with one friend. I know that with your help, we can grow this community faster. We can expand the reach of the Heart Healthy Hustle show. What would you tell that young man to do and not to do?
It's funny that most probably at that time I was sitting on a bench looking out at Sydney Harbour, feeling very restless at 25. Actually, wow. Very, very restless. Because nothing I wanted was happening. I wasn't even that guy. I wasn't even becoming this guy that I wanted to be. So if I was to put my arm around my 25-year-old self, I would say the same thing I knew back then, but I wasn't able to really understand it, is believe. I would just say one word: believe. Because belief is a power source which allows things to happen. And I didn't believe in myself enough. I didn't think I had the credibility. I didn't have the know-how. I wasn't good enough. And not in a detrimental way, just in general, to do what I do professionally. I definitely thought all my life I've always known I've been good enough. But in a sense of being good enough to do this type of work, no, definitely not. Especially when you're looking at when you got all the books on the bookshelf and you're looking at absolute masters and men who've done this for a long time and women who've done this for a long time, you see how small you are. So I would say to myself one thing: believe, and it's going to happen, and keep going, because it eventually played out exactly how I had dreamt all my life. I haven't finished yet, but it played out how I imagined it would play out, but it didn't come to me the way I had imagined it would come to me. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense to a lot of people. And the absolute faith I have in life is I know my destiny, but you have to then believe and have faith that destiny will play out. And you have to have the emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence to understand it ain't going to happen how you think it will happen, but it will happen if it's right for you. And in my case, it was absolutely right for me. Everyone at school actually most probably would have thought I would have been this guy when I was young, actually. So many people, most probably, this isn't too far out of their realm of what happened for me. But at the same time, I didn't always have the faith. I was a broken soul on the journey many days, because no matter what I was doing, even the businesses I was in was not even close to what I wanted to do. I'd be selling computers or something, and I wasn't even, that's not personal development. Then I'd be selling something else, and I'd be like, that's not personal development. I couldn't cross over. For some reason, I couldn't cross over. It wasn't my time. So knowing what I know now, it was just a matter of time. And when I was ready, I had the experience. And let me tell you, there's no Joe Duncan as you guys know him today or before 5 a.m. if I don't have a few breakups. I don't have a few good relationships, a few bad relationships, a few businesses that make money, and a few that have absolutely left me in a hole. Jobs where I've done well, jobs where I absolutely tanked. So I understand now that the job and my duty and my mission in life would have never come to me if I had given up on the journey. I could have easily given up, taken a normal job, make a couple of $100,000 a year, and that would be my life. I could have been that guy, but it wasn't in my nervous system to be that guy. And I think second to that, and the final part, it takes time. And for boys generally, and this is something I'm saying to a lot of guys more and more, by around mid-30s, it kind of makes a bit more sense. By 40, you kind of got your head around it. And I'm mid-30 now. So that was about 10 years ago. I was sitting on that bench in a very real sense, broken down by life, unsure, and not even close to building a personal development empire. And 10 years on, I've built a brand in 5 years organically, one of the largest personal development brands. And I get asked every day to speak around the world, coach people, do stuff like that. And sitting on that bench, no way would I believe that would happen the way it did happen. And to have 1 million followers would sound pretty crazy, I'd say, to my 25-year-old self.
Boom. I'm glad you mentioned the million, because I was going to do it for you just to give us some perspective for people. Going to ask you, how can we expedite that crossover? And then you mentioned when you're ready, it'll happen. And I'm learning that, in the last few months, especially, when you're ready, it'll happen. Would you say there's anything else we could do to expedite that crossover?
It is always the case of when you're ready, but that doesn't mean you sit on your butt. And I think the problem with 50% of the world, they take that information as, well, that's good. I better turn the PlayStation on and play some more Call of Duty because it'll happen when it's ready.
Unreal.
So, I think for me, it happened when I was ready, but it's taken me since I was 16 was my first business. So at school, I started my first business. 16, and what am I now? Mid-30s. So, it took 20 years for anything cool to happen, really. The best part of 20 years. I never stopped working. I started businesses which just because I had to start business. I had to learn. I had to be absolutely committed to learning and trying things and falling flat on my face. And I hated it for the most part. Now I look back and go, thank God I did. So yeah, when you're ready, but also it's the diligent work. The biggest thing you got to tell yourself, and I would have told my 25-year-old self, is take the pressure off. Go out there, fail, go stuff up. Show me how many mistakes you can make and get back up, and let's have a laugh about it. And you're going to get here anyway. And I eventually did get here anyway. So you've got to just know that your time will come and put yourself in a position where you can capitalize. That's the biggest thing. The saddest part is seeing people who their time has come, and guess what, Joe, I've got 2 kids now, and I got a mortgage I can barely afford. I'm not going to take that leap of faith. And you're like, well, again, decision not aligned with the overall vision. And I've been very blessed not to make any. Really, my biggest strength is I really never made any decisions which were terminal. You know, no kids, not married, a lot of things, and I've had those opportunities, as you can imagine, we all do. So subconsciously, I'm pretty lucky. Not that those things are terminal in the sense of they'll stop you, but a couple of bad decisions down the wrong road and you're paying off a house you can't afford, not putting your money into a business or whatever it is. So I've been pretty lucky when you talk about timing, and yes, you have to wait, but you got to be really patient.
Lucky or strategic?
Or stupid enough to keep going, in my case. As I always say. Okay. Silly enough to keep going. But on some level, very strategic. And I most probably don't give myself that credit yet. And one day I most probably will give myself that credit a bit more. But there's no doubt in my mind, I have always been very methodical about what I want and given myself enough time. And I've never, ever, whether subconsciously or consciously, I never made decisions which would really detrimentally keep me from doing what I always wanted to do. So I think you're right there, Jonathan. Pretty strategic in hindsight.
And then how do you handle that moment when it is your turn, when stuff starts to hit, when people say, I want to pay you, I want to hire you to speak across the world? I guess the long-term tortoise and the hare approach, it's like hockey stick growth many times for entrepreneurs. So in that moment of euphoria where you're kind of still processing the fact that it's happening, how do you handle that moment? A lot of times it's hockey stick growth all at once. People are asking you, hey, we need you to come speak across the world. We'll pay you a lot of money. Opportunities will pop up that are great opportunities that, in fact, do align with what you've always wanted and for the long-term vision. And I think that the forging of character that happens during the wait and during the patience and the hard work and the consistency and the methodical approach, it kind of forges the character necessary to handle that moment when it's your turn. Is there anything you would add to that?
I would say that that's absolutely true. I actually, for the longest time, as much as I get inquiries to speak around the world and do things from training companies and stuff like that, I'm very selective. And I still, up to this point where we're now at the 5-year point, I've always been very protective of making it about other people, the content, the community. I have not gone out to seek the bigger opportunity beyond my community, which is what a lot of people do. After they get to my place, they'd be trying to get on Ellen, they'd be trying to get the book deals, they'd be trying to really get the big PR plays and the big speaking engagements. I've never been that guy. I've always made it about the community and the work I love doing. I know, obviously, we will transition across to that, but in time, and I've been patient enough to do that because, let me tell you, the opportunity that come by, the excitement of what I do, you can get caught up in that. And if anything, I'm actually the opposite. I'm the guy who tells my team, let's just wait a bit. Let's get ourselves in order. You know, we're not there yet, even though we are. I've never been that guy because I'm still a believer in being organic. The longevity of it, building the community, is always going to be more important than being on the latest TV show or the talk show or selling your book or promoting your book. That's how I've always methodically looked at it and tried telling most people on the internet to do that, and they can't do it. And I actually think that's a great strength of ours at Before 5am and what I've done, rather than a weakness, because everyone else would have jumped on the PR bandwagon after they got 20,000 followers or 100,000 followers. I haven't. I'm at 1 million. I'm at 1.5, I think, across all platforms. You don't see me ranting and raving about it because we're not there yet.
I love that. The only finish line is death.
That's right. And I think from a lot of people, this would be the end goal. And a lot of kids who come work for me They're just so excited to work with me, learn what they can, and do something similar. And I always tell them, look, guys, that's great. You can do that, but you work for me. There's no ceiling. There's no top end. For me, it doesn't stop at a number. That's the smallest part of my dream. It's not even part of my dream. It's about all the other things we can do, building schools, building infrastructure, things like that I'm really passionate about, and building a much bigger picture.
Yeah.
And there's no ceiling for me. And having no ceiling, and I actually said this to I was caught up with a bodybuilder the other day for lunch, and he was asking me, Joe, what's the secret? I said, I have no ceiling. That's my secret. There is no end.
Yeah.
And that allows me never to be held back by one outcome or one happens in my life. And it allows me to keep going because I know there's no ceiling. I hit 1 billion people. I expect to do that. Now let's go 2 billion. Let's get the water supply cleaned up. Let's find a way to get renewable energy happening. Let's keep going. That's very different to, I'd say, when I was younger, where getting everything else had a ceiling. Getting that new BMW M3 was a ceiling rather than a starting point.
With Before 5 a.m., you're focusing primarily on well-being, performance, productivity, and purpose. Would you talk to us a bit about Impact Billions and what that means to you?
Yeah, 100%. I started Impact Billions, started with a group of influencers and friends in business who have big followings. And, we started that with the intention of creating the world's largest impactful a nonprofit and charity, which allows us to help billions of people. So that's still very early on in its course of its 20-year life cycle. I think we've been around for 2 years, and it's a way to bring more people together beyond Before 5 a.m. and also brings a lot more people in who care about those things. So for me, it's a vehicle and a vessel which over the next 5 years, you guys will start to see play out on some of those things I just spoke about, where we can start implementing educational tools all around the world. We can start cleaning up water supplies. We can start raising money in a more ethical way where the money goes directly to the source rather than an organization. So those are the things I'm really passionate about. Before 5 a.m. Plays a part in that. But overall, all these things are just one piece of the pie in my mindset.
Well, I do have to say, with as much respect as I have for your brand, after speaking with you, I'm really kind of seeing that you living with no ceiling, your vision is a lot bigger than I would have ever imagined. So it's pretty impactful.
Yes, someone's got to be a little crazy from time to time. Unfortunately, I got that bug. But, I don't know any other way to live, Jonathan. For most of my life, I didn't have that vision because, it was all make-believe, right? Beyond make-believe. Now, for me, it's not make-believe. It's just day by day, step by step. Joe, get up, do this, do this, do this. I know in 20 years' time we get there. I know in 2 months we're not going to get there, and I'm not stressed about it. I'm in the best phase of my life in the sense that I'm able to wake up every day, methodically go about my business, which I love, help people, and this for me is the best period of my life.
A lot of work ahead. A lot of
sleepless nights.
Truly fantastic. Joe Duncan, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on today's show. For the listeners, Joe has created something for you to help you achieve a vision similar. It's called the Blueprint for Success, and it's going to help you to get clear on what you want, who you want to be, and what you want to achieve. It'll help guide you to and help you find your passion, your purpose, and each chapter will show you empowering strategies and tasks that will allow you to perform at a higher level and make progress and see real results in your life. And you can get that at before5am.com, and that's going to be the number 5. Joe, before we go, I want to ask you, how do we get up before 5 a.m.?
I think I just told you the secret, and it is no ceiling, baby. The truth is, why I wake up so early, I don't want to sleep. I get to do what I love. I don't set an alarm. I'm just excited and motivated and inspired by what I get to do. Why would you want to sleep in? It's an old analogy I've used many times with people. I always say to them, hey, and always people reach out and say, Joe, I can't wake up before 5 a.m. I always say to them, tell you what, tomorrow morning I'm going to send a car around, a hire car around at 3:45 a.m. That hire car is going to pick you up, take you to a plane, a private jet. That private jet's going to have all your best friends and family waiting for you on the tarmac at 4:30 a.m. and you're going to go to the Bahamas for a week and live in a mansion and do everything you want. Now, you tell me then you can't wake up before 5 a.m.
I'm up.
And they always go, yeah, you're up. You're not sleeping the night before, right?
Let's go.
All expenses paid. So it goes to show you can get up before 5 a.m. It's just what are you looking forward to? And if all you're doing is getting up to your job and you hate your job, you're not really in love with your partner, and the dog annoys you, and the kids are running around making noise, and you're not in the best phase of your life, then, change it. You should have the power to change it and do something you love. And if you can't do something you love in a professional sense, then, and as I was saying, the before 5 a.m. philosophy is, then do something for yourself that you love in the morning before you go to work. If you love drawing, go draw in the morning. If you want to read a book. So I always do my most fun thing in the morning, and that's how I get up in the morning. No alarm needed for me to wake up and create some cool stuff. No alarm needed for me to go for a morning walk, watch the sunrise, and do something cool. So I think, do some cool stuff. Some mornings I love waking up, going for a drive before everyone else wakes up, and I get to enjoy the sun rising, the empty roads, and some great tunes. I'm feeling inspired. So the key to waking up early, I can give you guys all the philosophy, but when all is said and done, if you want to wake up before 5 a.m., have something you look forward to, do that, and then get on with the rest of your day.
No ceiling, baby. How can Heart
No ceiling, baby.
There we go. How can Heart Healthy Hustle Nation support you, Joe, and connect with you after the show?
You know what? You guys can connect with me at before5am.com. You can email me, Joe, at before5am.com. If you guys have any questions or want to be involved in anything we're doing, events, or want to join one of our seminars or whatever it is, always happy to connect with you guys, and that's the best place to start. And I love what you're doing, Jonathan. I think it's a great vision, a great mission, and a purpose. And I think we both know 5 years from now, 10 years from now, this is just going to be immense. And I'm excited to see that happen because, your journey is not too different to mine. And with a bit of time, bit of patience, and everything you're doing with all the love and energy that you're putting into this and your community, we both know how this story ends.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you again for being on the show. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thanks, everyone. Go have a great day if you're listening to this in the morning.
Congratulations on making it to the end of this episode. What about this episode stood out to you? Next, I need your help sharing this show. I want this podcast to impact and reach 6,000 people per episode by August 31st, 2019. And I want us to reach 15,000 people per month by March 29th, 2020. Have you been enjoying multiple episodes of The Heart Healthy Hustle? I'm thrilled to share with you an exclusive invitation to join our new Facebook community. To get to know other Heart Healthy Hustlers, simply go to thehearthealthyhustle.com/Facebook, where you can expect to see different members of our community being featured weekly in Facebook Live calls. I appreciate all of your love and support, and I will see you in the next episode. As always, be generous on every occasion. There is a story for you, and live wide open.